This week, Critiquing Comics returns. Adam and I discuss Kel McDonald's slightly X-Files-y Murky Water, and Jason joins me to discuss a recent Avery Hill release, Lucy Sullivan's story about being in the creaky mental health care system called Barking. First, don't forget to take our listener survey to let us know what we're doing right or wrong as we put this show together and choose our topics. Recently, I've shortened up the questionnaire somewhat, but you should still allow 5 to 10 minutes to finish it. The link is in the show notes. This is Tim.
This is Jason.
And this is Adam.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. We're back after many months. This is Tim in Tokyo with Adam in Nagoya. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I actually, today is a holiday. Well, it's a makeup holiday, right? I guess yesterday was actually
right.
a holiday.
Actually, Sunday was the holiday, so it's we celebrate on Monday, or we get the day off on Monday.
Yeah. So I took my family up to the mountains in Gifu. We went skiing all day, so it was a good day. But I'm very sore. It's much harder to ski over the age of 40. So.
Yeah, I imagine. All right. So we were sent a comic called Murky Water by Kel McDonald, whose website says that Kel is a they, them. So I'm going to slip up most likely, but just to let everybody know.
Okay.
So this comic is about like a police unit that investigates like supernatural stuff. They call it SNOWI, like snowy, supernatural, otherworldly investigations. And there are only 2 cops on this beat, and one of them is a werewolf, although we never actually see him turn into a werewolf. We never see anybody turn into a werewolf in this comic, even though there are at least 2 characters who can, which is kind of interesting. It's not, I guess that's not what it's about exactly, but.
Yeah, I liked that aspect. Like, I typically am not really that interested in like vampires and werewolves and that kind of stuff, but this is like a very mundane, it's like a world where they exist, but you don't actually see them ever. It doesn't play into the story. And what's kind of funny about it is, I guess people know that werewolves exist, but they're still not willing to accept some of the other supernatural stuff in this world. It seems like there was a comment where he said, that they're forced to accept werewolves because he saved somebody's life on TV as a werewolf, but they're still not ready to accept sorcery and magic and other kind of things, even though those are all obviously going on in this story. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we do see is a character. Now, I think this is a word that Kel made up because when I searched for it on Google, all I found was Kel's website. Thaumanip, which is someone who can control an element. And I take it that means like the 4 elements of antiquity, like air, water, earth, fire. Because this Thaumanip can control water. But yeah, I don't know what the source of this word is.
Yeah, it's new to me too.
I mean, Kel must have had a method to come up with this word, and I don't know if it draws on another language or what. But yeah, I think it's an original of Kel's. I don't know, as I was saying before we started recording, I had a little trouble following this. I read it twice, and I started to read it a third time and then ran out of time. But I guess part of it was I felt like there were several things where something was brought up, like a person's name. So, for example, on page 66, this character Rebecca Gadling is mentioned, and she's like a bodyguard, I think it says. And then nothing happened. And then 12 pages later, the other cop, Maria Pimenta, is looking up Rebecca Gadling on some kind of device, and by that time I'd completely forgotten that Rebecca Gadling had ever been mentioned. Like, so.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it would have been nice to have a little bit more of a reminder there, like why was Maria looking up this Rebecca Gadling? I don't think Rebecca ever actually appears in the comic other than just like on that search device.
Right.
Does
I don't
she?
think that she does. Yeah, I didn't. She doesn't appear. She doesn't actually make any appearance herself. But it's kind of just backstory because, and I guess this is kind of drawing out a little bit. We're going to jump right into the plot of the story here in a minute. But I think that the what's her name, Maria, is the assistant, and she's kind of on the fence, like if she really trusts her partner or not. She's kind of like digging up dirt on him while at the same time she's, kind of helping him out with this investigation. And so I think that might be what is confusing, is because there's things where she's looking that up because she wants to get dirt on her partner, it seems like. And she wants to see that.
Burke.
Right. She wants to show that he's sympathetic to these otherworldly kind of creatures, and that he's not doing his job as a cop. And so it sort of plays into the trope of like a rookie cop that's too rigid in following the rules too strictly and not understanding that you have to kind of bend the rules as a cop. But I think it's done in a interesting way, because you see her kind of going back and forth, and it does cast doubt on her partner Burke. Right, you're not sure at any point if he really is a good cop or if he is kind of protecting these werewolves and other creatures.
Yeah, I didn't feel that was ever really resolved.
Yeah, so I felt like it was almost like a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing, where at the end he explains that it was all kind of playing to his plan. Like he was like, "Oh, I knew about this boy, and I was the one who used that to lure, this woman who I knew was after me." And he kind of does, to an extent, he kind of alludes to the fact that all these people in the past, he handled it in a way, but not necessarily the way that the law would, want him to. Mm-hmm. So, like he, and he's very coy about it too, because there's the one, I think it was Rebecca, this is Rebecca character, he says that he handled her, and Maria assumes that means he killed her, but actually he, I think, gave her up to a vampire or something like that, or
something like that. He said, like, in the normal sense, she's alive, I guess, or something like that.
Right.
But it was really vague what exactly happened to her.
Exactly. And so he does this kind of intentional thing where he never directly says what he's thinking or planning to Maria. And he kind of keeps her guessing. And then at the end, he does that whole Sherlock Holmes thing where he was like, "Of course, didn't you understand these clues that I was subtly dropping all along?" So it was kind of a cool device, I thought. I think it worked well. But I can see how people might get lost in the story if they're not paying very close attention to all these different names and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess the point of the story was what you said about that Maria is expecting being a cop to be really black and white, and she seems really frustrated, because that seems to be that's the point of that last page. And I don't know, when I was reading it, it felt kind of anticlimactic to me, but I guess if you think of it that way, that's just her frustration. It kind of works.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that there's, I'm not sure if there's necessarily a point that they're trying to make so much as it's just kind of a reimagining of that classic kind of. It's like the X-Files, or what was that comic called, Powers, I think, where it's like taking the classic kind of detective duo, but putting them in a totally different, in a different world, in a different kind of universe where all this other kind of fantasy stuff exists and what they would do with it. And so in that regard, I think it did really well. I think personally, I really, really liked the pacing. I felt like it built up really naturally. It made you feel kind of excited as they were, going towards that kind of denouement at the train station where they're, kind of trying to prevent this vigilante from killing the werewolf boy. So, in that regard, I think it did really well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent. I think that there was sometimes where it was a little bit hard to follow, just because, as I said, you have people kind of betraying each other, like this. What was the word that they had for the people who control elements? Check
my notes again. Thalmanip.
Thalmanip, yeah. The Thalmanip is resents Burke because he's a werewolf, so she'll only give information out to his partner Maria, but she's actually manipulating Maria. But all along, Burke knew that was going to happen. So there's like these layers upon layers of what's kind of going on, these kind of onion skin thing.
Yeah, I guess I got a little lost there because Okay, so she manipulated Maria because she was telling Maria that Connor was absolutely doing bad stuff, and maybe that wasn't actually true.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was something where she necessarily knew it wasn't true. It could be that she just felt, or that she's kind of consumed with this idea that she has to get revenge for somebody or stop somebody who killed somebody. That kind of thing. So, but then you find out. I guess maybe we should rewind this a little bit and explain the actual basics of the plot. So it's these two are assigned to a case where somebody drowned in his living room, but there's no forced entry signs. There's no sign of violence. Just he drowned in his living room.
Yeah, no sign that he was drugged. No sign of water around him.
Right. Exactly. And then so they have a hunch that it's this whatever that word is again.
Thalmanip.
Yeah, Thalmanip. They have a hunch that it was a Thalmanip that did this to him. And so, they go to investigate that. And then I guess that was – or no, I'm sorry. They go to investigate his estranged wife, and then they find out that she's a Thalmanip, right, is what it was.
Right. And she had proof that eventually comes out that – it was an assisted suicide when she killed him, and he left a video message because he had been bitten by a werewolf, and he didn't want to turn into a werewolf, so he had her kill him. I don't know that I would want to be assisted suicide by drowning. That
that's pretty miserable.
Yeah, I mean there are nicer ways, I think.
Well, also, an assisted suicide, you would kind of want that to be a clinical thing and not have your wife do it for you.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I guess it was true because she had the video, unless it was AI. Never can tell nowadays.
Yeah.
But the AI aspect is not explored, so apparently it wasn't AI.
Yeah, I think that if there is any kind of a point that they're trying to make, it could be, like you said, a point about kind of having rigid beliefs. And because not only does Maria have really rigid beliefs about adhering to the letter of the law, but I think also, this Thalmanip and her husband both also have this rigid understanding, if you're a werewolf, you are bad. So if he's bitten, he must die. There's no rehabilitation or any kind of hope for him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of, if there's a point to it, that might be it, is that this Agent Burke is more about finding a way to kind of rehabilitate these people and still keep them integrated in society, even though they are vampires or werewolves or what have you. So I think that might be kind of the overall message of it, perhaps.
Well, yeah, there's an element of just kind of prejudice there.
Right.
Like werewolves automatically bad.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think that, of course you can extrapolate that into, all kinds of other things, right?
Yeah.
And I would say it's interesting. Now, I didn't read that the author, identifies as a they, them, but there are a lot of things like that where it's just very natural. Like he has Agent Burke, is married to I don't know what he is. Like he's some kind of an important politician.
Yeah, it's an unusual title that his husband has.
Right.
Providence Administrator.
Okay. I wonder if that means province administrator.
That was what I thought it was at first, and I noticed there were a few extra letters there.
Yeah, well, there are some other typos in this, and I'm sure that
Yes.
they caught your attention as well. So
Yes. I did want to mention that. A proofreader would be good, and I'm available. But, but yeah, there were places like on page 5, the word need was missing, just so we precautions.
right.
Or on page 91, it said, you might know, KNOW, agree with my methods rather than not agree.
Right.
There were a few other things like that and a couple misspellings. And yeah, I could have used a good going over.
There's one that reminded me of a mistake that I see Japanese people making a lot. It was on page 95, and it says to scan the cord instead of code. And that's like code and cord sound the same in Japanese, but for for like English speakers, it doesn't sound the same.
Right. Oh, yeah. The machine says enter scan cord. I missed that one.
Yeah. But I think there was a few little typos that if this hasn't gone to press yet, it might be worth kind of going in.
Well, actually, by the time this episode comes out, starting on February 19th, Kel has a Kickstarter going for this. So perhaps it's not too late to make some lettering adjustments.
Yeah. The lettering has a very nice handwritten kind of quality to it. So the lettering is really good. So yeah, it's just fixing these typos, of course. But I guess can I kind of talk about some of the things that I think really worked for this?
Okay.
So first of all, I think that there's some really great body language all throughout the comic. When she's walking around with the kid who's really nervous, the kid who's a werewolf. The kid is walking with his kind of arms crossed in a way that he looks nervous, and he kind of is chewing on his sleeve and things like that. Whereas she's walking with her hands in her pockets and looks much more confident. And there's a really good contrast between how the two people feel in the scene just by their body language. And I noticed that in quite a few different panels where you can just tell a lot about the person and the kind of character that they are and the kind of, attitude that they have based on just their body language. So I thought that was really great. On page 30, you can see her walking around the apartment and kind of counting her steps, and even just the way her feet look and the way she's kind of tilting her head back to look around the corner and things. It's just done in a really cinematic way. It's done in a really the way the panels are broken up and the way that the poses and stuff are done. It's a very effective kind of use of body language and things like that. So that I think the artist did an excellent job.
Yeah, it looks really realistic, like how you would do it. She's finding that what they figure out on the next page is that there is a hidden room, but she's like, part of the apartment is missing because looking in the bathroom, there should be more over here and there isn't. So
Right.
And then she's counting it off with her feet, like just putting one toe to the other heel and working out how many of her feet it is from one place to another.
Exactly, and that's a hard thing to convey visually, and I think the artist pulled it off very, very well. I never felt strange about it at all. It's like, without saying anything in particular, most of that page is wordless, but you still kind of tell what's going on, and so I think that was accomplished very well.
Yeah.
An example would be on page 84. There's a scene where the two of them are kind of arguing, the two partners. So she's pushing him back and he's trying to crowd her. And I just think that's another example where it has really great blocking and really great poses that kind of convey a lot in just the body language.
Well, and Kel really needs that too, because a lot of this comic is talking. So you got to work to make the visuals interesting. Because there's like what is it, a train station? That's kind of where the action scene is, and a lot of the rest of it is, well, there's some detective work, and then a lot of it is just conversation. So, but yeah, it doesn't really. Man, I was a little kind of noticing, wow, there's a lot of talking in this, but yeah, the visuals stay interesting, I think.
Yeah, there's none of the just talking head panels like you see in a lot of these kind of comics where there's a lot of dialogue. And I think there's a variation, first of all, like I said, in the posing and the blocking, but there's also a lot of variation in the angle that the scene is viewed from. So a good example of that would be like on page 95 and 94. So like on page 95, she's walking around, she's walking up to a big pillar, and then the next panel in the middle there, it zooms up, so you're kind of looking down at her opening this box. And so the whole comic does a lot of this thing where the camera angle is moving around to show a lot of variation, but it's used as a kind of narrative device because you can create tension, I think, with the way that the way it's viewing them and stuff. So that's another thing that I wanted to compliment the art on, is that there's a good use of shadow, a good use of of lighting to kind of create that kind of tension as well. So I think page 100 shows the kind of villain stepping in, and she's completely covered in shadow except for a very thin kind of bit of light in the very front. So so there's I think there's a lot to compliment as far as the artwork, and like I said, that I think that the story is really well paced and it goes really well. My only real complaint, story-wise, would be that at the end I wasn't sure why all of a sudden the woman ran away. Once I did a second reading, it became clear that the lights had come back on and people might see what she was doing, and she's very careful about trying to not get caught. But I wasn't sure, like on page 104 where the lights turn back on, I wasn't sure what was going on there, and all of a sudden she just runs away.
Yeah, I struggled a bit with the blackout too. When she first turns the power off, there is just like a completely black panel, which to me suggested that like someone was knocked unconscious or some kind of a mental thing was happening, but that wasn't what it was. And the rest of the panels after that, it wasn't pitch black.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of confused me. But yeah, there's a sound effect for the lights going off and the lights coming on, which is like that fzz, fzz, in both cases. That's our cue, what's happening there.
Yeah, so that I think that it could have been done a little bit to make it more obvious with the the artwork.
Yeah, the artwork does look darker when the lights are off, and then when we get the second fizz, the panel is brighter, but it's a little subtle. Yeah.
Yeah. In hindsight, it was much more clear, but yeah. Other than that, honestly, I really liked it. I thought it was well paced, and I thought it was also just an interesting take on this type of story. Not that this kind of story is all that common of a genre, but I mean, it was an interesting comic book, so I enjoyed it for sure.
Yeah, I struggled with it a bit, but yeah, I think it's not bad. I was pleasantly surprised by the art when I first looked at it. Sometimes we get sent comics that the art has that there are many comments we can make about the art improving, but that's not the case here. I think the art is, as Mulele might say, quite accomplished. And yeah, just I had a few points with the storytelling and then with the typos. But yeah, overall it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I guess my one last comment is I also think that the dialogue is very good. It's very, it's snappy. It's pretty natural.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, so I think that the writer obviously has the skill for creating good dialogue as well. Mm-hmm. And there's no boxes anywhere telling you like, and then the characters were doing this. It's all told through dialogue and through visual storytelling.
Yeah, that's true. Other than the end at the end, there are no narration boxes.
Right. So, yeah.
And actually that the end surprised me a bit because I kind of felt like there must be more, like it was continued to the next issue or something, but I guess it's not.
Yeah, and I know that the mail that we got had links to, previous volumes of this, and I don't really know. It could be that this is kind of a whole, like a part of a whole world that they're kind of creating or something. I didn't go back and read those, but I could see this being the kind of thing where the setting is like this, but it's just kind of a different group of people each time in this one universe, maybe. But
right, yeah. So I'm looking at the email. There's a link to the Kickstarter, link to a preview of the Kickstarter before it launches on the 19th, and then link to a different comic on kelmcdonald.com, The City Between. And there's some other comics on the site too. Kel has been busy. And PDFs to previous 3 volumes.
Right.
Now, volumes, does that mean this is all part of one story? I'm sorry, I didn't look at them, but
yeah, that's what I meant. I didn't look at them either, but it could very well be that these are all either connected or that they're all at least just different stories occupying the same universe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I'm glancing at Fame and Misfortune here, and it seems to be completely different characters. But yeah,
okay.
Perhaps it's the same universe. I don't know. I was looking at a different comic of Kel's on the website that seemed to have something to do with vampires, with a little bit more actual vampire action to it compared to this one with werewolves only mentioned and no actual people turning into wolves.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kel's kind of wheelhouse seems to be these kind of little bit traditional horror elements, but not a horror story.
Right. Kind of a different genres within that horror-esque kind of world, maybe.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I will link to the site and also to the Kickstarter, which, as I said, will be up by the time this podcast goes up.
Okay.
Check the show notes for links to Kel McDonald's Murky Water and the Kickstarter campaign to publish it. Coming up, Jason joins me to review Lucy Sullivan's Barking, a look at the inadequacies of the mental health care system from a patient's point of view. But first, join us for 20th Century TV and music trivia quiz videos and more on our Patreon page. Patrons donating $4 a month or more get access to hours of additional podcasts, including our current series on Jim Starlin's Captain Marvel work. Get all the info at patreon.com/deconcomics.
I crave superheroic content. Let's see what's on.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Nah, I don't think so.
I'm Batman.
Not really what I'm looking for.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
Ugh, absolutely not.
This is Robin the Boy Wonder. I'm Batman.
Aha, now that's more like it.
If you see Adam West as the one true Batman, then this is the podcast for you. Tune in on your favorite podcast source to hear Tim and Paul discuss the 1966 series and everything connected with it. What's the podcast called?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
I'm talking with Jason McNamara in formerly very icy and messed up Portland, Oregon. How are you doing?
We're digging out. We're getting the show back on the road. Didn't have heat or power for a week. Didn't have water for 2 weeks. Now I've got cold water. So there's nothing but cold showers in my future, which is probably better for the human race in the long run.
So, yeah, we had to delay recording this because a week ago you didn't have power.
Nope. Fun times. But, I'll say other people had it worse. I didn't have a tree come through my house. My car wasn't crushed. Me and the dogs are alive and well, and everything else can work itself out.
Yeah, so you can get back to where you were, where if there's a tree on your house, it's a little harder to do that.
Zero, Tim. I'm always trying to get back to zero. That's the dream. For one day, just to have a zero bank account.
Rather than minus. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've been there. So we've got another book from Avery Hill. This is a book that was previously published by a smaller publisher. Multiversity Comics put this out in 2020. It's called Barking by Lucy Sullivan. I found an article on their site about it, which was incredibly adulatory, of course. Other reviews were also very positive. I don't think this is going to be one of them. I kind of struggled with this book, and I think you did too.
I'll start by saying some very nice things.
Okay.
About Barking and Lucy's work. I think Lucy is an amazing illustrator. There are some pages in this book that are drop dead gorgeous, like really beautiful. Like I think this creative was not on my radar, but I'm sure they're going to have a long career in comics or whatever it is that they choose to do. Because as an illustrator, there's an early page where the main character is being chased by a wolf. And I was like, I would tattoo that on my neck. It was just the composition, the ink work. Like this person is just a fantastic illustrator. I want to get that out of the way. And the book is really about dealing with mental health and depression and sort of survivor's guilt and grief, all of which I think are ripe to mine for comics. Mm-hmm. And the way that she does it is she brings, there's like a talking dog or a beast that follows her around and whispers terrible things in her ear and tells her all the worst things that
you're useless. And
if you've struggled with depression, as I have, like that's a great manifestation of this voice that's in your head that tells you that you're useless and worthless and that you shouldn't go on. So I think representing that as a hound that follows you around is beautiful. I think that's really interesting. I also think that Lucy sort of brings, once she gets into the mental health care facility, she brings the cacophony of that, the chaos of that into the illustrations, into the dialogue, into the shape of the artwork. That you have empathy for this character because you, the reader, are going through the same thing. It is challenging to be in that place because this book is challenging just visually to read. So I do think that is really, really successful. Where I struggled, and I'll be honest, I got like 70 pages into this. I picked it up twice. I think I quit around the same time where I was like, I just can't take it. It's like 70 or 80. The whole thing's 130 pages, and I'm sure it turns around, but like after 70 pages of absolute misery, I just had to tap out. And the book gets harder and harder to read the text, to read. Everything's hand lettered. And that's not a complaint. I don't think you could it would not look as well. It wouldn't be of the same piece if you use like digital lettering. Digital lettering would kill this book.
Yes.
But sometimes there are just, for example, there'll be two characters talking and the words are floating between them without a balloon, without a tail. And I'm like, I don't know who is talking.
Yeah, and they're all kind of jumbled and you can't tell what order to read stuff in.
And I think part of that is intentional by design. It's supposed to make you feel the chaos of being in this world. But like, I do feel now that I'm on drugs reading this. I do feel like, and a little bit of challenging, I think is great. But after 70 pages, I was like, I just feel like I'm getting hit in the face with a frying pan for 70 pages. Like, this is awful. And even by page 5, I'm like, I have a logic problem 2 scenes in. So yeah, the lettering also, like, because it's hand lettered, she will double track it. Like, she'll go over the lettering again, but like not cover the same line, but create a parallel line. So there's like a little sliver of white in the middle of a lot of the text. It's very, very challenging to read.
Yeah.
It's even in the title page, the way the title's done. So the hand lettering it's just super challenging. And I know that's the point of it, but at a certain point, I wish that she had just thrown us a bone and moved the narrative along, or just given us some sort of natural state before they upended everything. Because if every panel is wavy and off center and squiggly, you know, you transition to that from straight panels to let you know this is how this character feels, but the whole thing is like that. So it's exhausting, I guess is what I would say. It's beautiful. Like the illustrations, I would think is almost like a Ralph Steadman or Bill Sienkiewicz line work to this. If you remember those old, like the original cover to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, you know, this person is a fantastic illustrator. I think part of the problem is the hand lettering gets chaotic and intentionally overlaps. Is really, really tough to read. And there are many, I wouldn't say many, but I'd say there's probably 5 female characters with dark hair in this book.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what any of the characters look like.
Yeah, they're sort of interchangeable, which I think if you had just done like a flat color or brought in some more grayscale or some spots, it would help me know when I'm looking at the main character or who is even speaking.
Yeah,
I synopsis for this, I really wouldn't know. I wouldn't understand the story. But we talk about the very first 2 scenes, and maybe you can explain to me what I'm missing. The very first scene, and it's beautiful. Like, I don't want to. This artist is excellent. Like, just really emotive. Like, you feel how you're supposed to feel reading this. There's no other way to feel but like sorrow and grief and chaos. So there is a text box that says October 25th, 4:45. And she's running towards a bridge, and she's being chased by this beastly dog, this hound. And she throws herself off the bridge, and she falls in front of traffic and gets run over. And then the next scene starts with her not having jumped off the bridge, but still being yelled at by this hallucinatory dog. So what's the hallucination? Is the hallucination I jumped by being chased with a dog that's not real? Or is it, no, that was just a hallucination. Really, I'm here with an imaginary dog. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost piling on. Like, you can't do both.
Well, I mean, it took me until this morning to figure out what was happening in this scene. Although part of the problem with that was reading the PDF, and I was reading it page by page, but there are spreads in here that I wasn't picking up. Right. And seeing the 2 pages next to each other made it make a little bit more sense because I could see the whole picture. But once I figured it out this morning, I was like, okay, so, I mean, yeah, the dog is always there, and the dog is symbolizing her mental health difficulty. But yeah, then I think she imagines rather than hallucinates that she's jumping off the bridge. And she's maybe imagining what she is considering doing or being tempted to do, but then we find out she didn't actually do it. But yeah, the mental health problem is still there. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with that.
That one I did, because I was like, okay, which one's the real world? Neither are the real world, because there is not actually a dog following her saying these things. And that these captions are not, they don't help orientate you at all.
No.
These arbitrary dates and times, I was like, okay, so this is the exact same time you didn't jump, or is this a year earlier? Like, I'm trying to solve this. I'm like, I'm immediately lost.
Yeah, I mean, I got to the point where I was going through the book and writing them all down so I could look at them side by side and see what the progression was, or if she was jumping back in time or not, or and so once I did that, I kind of got it. And then there is a point later in the book where it says it's 18 months earlier, so that helps you not miss that. Although I didn't really understand what it was that happened 18 months earlier.
Is that when the friend is assaulted and dies?
I guess that's what happens.
She's got hair. That's how you know it's a different character. So the grief is she was a bad friend, or she wasn't there for her friend, and her friend was attacked. And I don't know that she was killed. It says she came back black and blue. And she's got guilt, because if she had shown up or been her better friend, this wouldn't have happened. And she's sort of being haunted by her failures as a friend, if not the friend herself. And the illustrations are very evocative. If this didn't have any text in it, I would still get the emotional content of it. But as a straight narrative, I don't feel like it doesn't really go anywhere. She goes to a mental health place, and this demon dog is just hounding her. And that's what I got through the first 70 pages.
Yeah, and I think the art is interesting, but I think it makes it harder to get the message of the book, because it's so kind of, I mean, I don't want to say messy or sloppy, because she did it this way on purpose, but it's just all so murky that, I can't identify characters very easily, and it's a little hard to read, and it just gets tiring to try to read it.
It's intentionally challenging, and at a certain point, I just gave up. I wasn't up to the challenge after 70 pages.
Yeah, I did go through it 3 times, although I think the first time I didn't really understand anything.
Okay, what is the message of the book then? Because I do believe that this is worth talking about, and I like the concept of it, and I like the idea. The execution for me is just so meandering and hard to parse out that it's becomes cold, and it becomes too distant for me. I don't feel connected to the character or what's going on.
No, neither do I. At the end, there's an afterword by Lucy Sullivan, and she kind of, explain. It's just like, the Image Comics, essay at the end explaining what the comic was about. I get, mental health care systems are inadequate, could be much better, probably in any country. This is the UK in the case of this book. I just feel like in order to get that message across, it would have been nice to have, characters more easily recognizable and just kind of be able to more easily understand what was going on in the book. Yeah, like you say, there could have been some murkier panels that would show the patient's mental state, but when the whole book is like that, it's just kind of tough to make it through, because even if you're not triggered of one's own mental health issues, it's just tiring to try to glean what the story is.
And I like challenging artwork. I like this as non-traditional. I think it wouldn't be insulting to say this is non-commercial for a comic book.
Yeah.
It is nearly inaccessible in that I'm just not involved, and I feel like I'm on the outside of the entire thing, looking in, hanging on by my fingernails, trying to follow this.
It makes me wonder if the adulatory reviews are kind of complimenting what her goal is in the afterword rather than the execution of it. I don't know. I mean, or I feel like they're Yeah, the more like what she was trying to do rather than what the actual reading experience is. Because I don't see how anyone could. I mean, this isn't an easy read for anybody, I don't think. Maybe both because of the subject matter, but also just because of the murkiness of the whole thing.
It's unrelentingly inaccessible.
Yeah.
And if it was like a 20-page piece, I could finish it and be like, that was interesting.
Yeah.
But to go on this long, this way is like the train doesn't stay on the tracks. For me, I just could not get invested in this. And this speaks to me because I have had that little black dog following me around, telling me horrible things. And I'm here to tell you my antidepressants are working.
Good.
But when I saw this artwork, I was like, oh shit, this book is gorgeous. Yeah, let's review this.
Yeah, when I glanced at it when it first came, I thought that was what I thought too before I tried to read it.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's almost in another language. And it's so relentlessly cacophonous that I really appreciate the effort. I really appreciate the artistry. I think it is a beautiful piece to look at. But as a narrative, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard with.
Yeah, maybe it would work better as like art that you frame and put on the wall.
Or smaller doses, you know what I mean?
That would be a smaller dose, yeah, if it's just a picture on the wall.
This is a tough place to spend 130 pages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. But I do want to see what Lucy does next or has done next if this book is already a couple years old. Like I'm still open and excited about this creator. I just think this book just wasn't for me. Like I couldn't hang with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the dark. I am.
Well, yeah, your own books show that.
I'm on board with challenging the audience and everything. It was just the inaccessibility of the piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So swing and a miss, Lucy. But I want to see everything else you do next because I think you are a very, very intriguing creator, and I think your work is gorgeous.
Barking by Lucy Sullivan is published by Avery Hill. If you're enjoying this podcast, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics and go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on X Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Via our site, you can also shop on Amazon to support the show and find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode there or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Are you making a comic? Send us that and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is from bensound.com. In the show notes, you'll find a link to our listener survey. We'd really appreciate it if you could take 5 to 10 minutes to give us your opinions of this podcast. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, Kumar and Emmett reviewed Yoko Kui's manga series Delicious in Dungeon. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics.